So I am hyper behind, actually. I am so behind right now. I thought that I was coasting, but no, actually, I'm doing the opposite of that, actually. This is the bright candlelit room where the lifetimers are stored. Shelf upon shelf of them, squat hourglass, one for every living person, pouring their fine sand from the future into the past. The accumulated hiss of the falling grains make the room roar like the sea. This is the owner of the room, stalking through it with a preoccupied air. His name is Death, but not any Death. This is the Death whose particular sphere of operations is, well, not a sphere at all, but the Discworld, which is flat and rides on the back of four giant elephants who stand on the shell of an enormous star turtle great, a Atuan, which is bounded by a waterfall that cascades endlessly into space. Scientists have calculated that the chance of anything so patently absurd actually existing are millions to one. But magicians have calculated that million to one chances crop up 9 times out of 10. Death clicks across the black and white tiled floor on toes of bone, muttering inside his cowl as his skeletal fingers count along the rows of busy hourglasses. Finally, he finds one that seems to satisfy him, lifts it carefully from its shelf and carries it across the nearest candle. He holds it so that the light glints off and stares at the little point of reflected brilliance. The steady gaze of those twinkling eye sockets encompasses the world turtle. Sculling through the deeps of space, carapace scarred by comets and pitted by meteors. One day, even great Octuid will die, Death knows. Now that would be a challenge. But the focus of his gaze dives onwards towards the blue-green magnificence of the disk itself, turning slowly under its tiny orbiting sun. Now it curves away towards the great mountain range called Ram Tops. The Ram Tops are full of deep valleys and unexpected crags and considerably more geography than they know what to do with. They have their own peculiar weather, full of shrapnel rain and whiplash winds and permanent thunderstorms. Some people say it's all because the Ram Tops are the home of old wild magic. Mind you, some people will say anything. Death blinks, adjusts for depth of vision. Now he sees the grassy country of the true wide slopes of the mountain. Now he sees a particular hillside. Now he sees a field. Now he sees a boy running. Now he watches. Now with a voice like lead slabs being dropped on ground, he says, yes. There is no doubt that there's something magical in the soil of that hilly, broken area, which because of the strange tint, gave to the local flora. Hi, Puma. You want up? You want up? Okay. Local flora was known as the octarine grass country. For example, is one of the few places on the disc where plants produced reannual varieties. Reannuals are plants that grow backwards in time. Oh, okay. You sow the seed this year and they grow last year. Huh. Mort's family specialized in distilling the wine from reannual grapes. These were powerful and much sought after by fortune tellers, since, of course, they enabled them to see the future. The only snag was that you got the hangover the morning before and had to drink a lot to get over it. Reannual growers tended to be big, serious men, much given to introspection and close examination of the calendar. A farmer who neglects to sow ordinary seeds only loses the crop, whereas someone who forgets to sow seeds of a crop that have already been harvested 12 months ago risks disturbing the fabric of causality, not to mention acute embarrassment. It was also acutely embarrassing for Mort's family that the youngest son was not at all serious and had about the same talent for horticulture that you would find in a dead starfish. It wasn't that he was unhelpful, but that he had a kind of vague, cheerful helpfulness that serious men soon learn to dread. There's something infectious, possibly even fatal about it. He was tall, red haired, and freckled, with the sort of body that seems to only be marginally under its owner's control. It appeared to have built out of knees. On this particular day, it was hurling across the high fields, waving its hands and yelling. Mort's father and uncle watched in uh, discon disconsolati telly disconsolati telly no disconsolately. Holy shit. Disconsolately. Disconsolately. Oh my god! Disconsolately. Dis disconsolately from the stone wall. Okay, Mort's father and uncle watched it disconsolately from the stone wall. What I don't understand, said Father Lezick, is that the birds don't even fly away. I'd fly away if I saw it coming towards me. Ah, the human body's a wonderful thing. I mean, his legs go all over the place, but there's a fair turn of speed there. Mort reached the end of a furrow. An overfull wood pigeon lurched slowly his way. His heart's in the right place. Mind, said Lezick carefully. Of course. 'Tis the rest of him that isn't. He's clean about the house, doesn't eat much, said Lezick. No, I can see that. Lezick turned sideways at his brother, who was staring fixedly at the sky. I did hear you'd got a place going up at your farm, Hamish, he said. Ah, got an apprentice in, didn't I? Ah, said Lezick gloomily. When was that then? Yesterday, said his brother, lying with rattlesnake speed. All signed and sealed. Sorry, look, I got nothing against young Mort. See, he's a nice boy, as he's as nice a boy as you could wish to meet. It's just that I know, said Lezick. He couldn't find his arse with both hands. They stared at the distant figure. It had fallen over. Some pigeons had waddled over to inspect it. He's not stupid, mind, said Hamish. Not what you'd call stupid. There's a brain there, all right, Lezick conceded. Sometimes he starts thinking so hard, uh, you has to hit him around the head to get his attention. His granny taught him to read, see? I reckon it overheated his mind. Mort had got up and tripped over his robe. You ought to see him You ought to set him to a trade, said Hamish reflectively. The priesthood, maybe, or wizardry. They do a lot of reading, wizards. They looked at each other. Into into both their minds stole an inkling of what Mort might be capable of if he got his well-meaning hands on a book of magic. All right, said Hamish hurriedly. Something else, then. There must be lots of things he could turn his hands to. He starts thinking too much. That's the trouble, said Leslie. Look at him now. You don't think about how to scare birds. He just does it. A normal boy, I mean. Hammond scratched his chin thoughtfully. It could be someone else's problem, he said. Leslie's expression did not alter, but there was a subtle change around his eyes. How do you mean, he said. There's the hiring fair at Sheep Ridge next week. You set him as a apprentice, see? And his new master'll have the job of knocking him into shape. 'Tis the law. Get him indentured, and 'tis binding. Leslie looked at the field looked across the field at his son, who was examining a rock. I wouldn't want anything to happen to him, mind, he said doubtfully. We're quite fond of him, his mother and me. You get used to people. It'd be for his own good, you'll see. Make a man of him. Well, there's certainly plenty of raw material, sighed Leswick. Moore was getting interested in the rock. It was curly shells in it, relics of the early days of the world, where the creator made creatures out of stone. No one knew why. Moore was interested in a lot of things. Why people's teeth fitted together so neatly, for example. He'd given that one a lot of thought. But then there was the puzzle of why the sun came out during the day instead of at night, when the light would come in useful. He knew the standard explanation, which somehow didn't seem satisfying. In short, Moore was one of those people who are more dangerous than a bag full of rattlesnakes. He was determined to discover the underlying logic behind the universe, which was going to be hard because there wasn't one. The creator had a lot of remarkably good ideas when he put the world together, but making it understandable hadn't been one of them. Tragic heroes always groan when the gods make an interest in them, but it's the people the gods ignore who get really tough deals. His father was yelling at him as usual. Mort threw the rock at a pigeon, which was almost too full was almost too full to lurch out of the way, and wandered across the field. And that was why Mort and his father uh, walked down through the mountains to Sheep Ridge on Hog's Watch Eve, with Mort's rather sparse possessions in a sack on the back of a donkey. The town wasn't much more than four sides of a cobbled square, lined with shops that provided all the service industry of the farming community. Uh, After 5 minutes, Mort came out of the tailor's wearing a loose fitting brown garment of imprecise function, which had been understandably unclaimed by the previous owner and had plenty of room for him to grow, on the assumption that he would grow into into a 19-legged elephant. His father regarded him critically. Very nice, he said. For the money. It itches, said Mort. I think there's things in here with me. There's thousands of lads in the world be thankful for a piece of warm, Lessig paused and gave up, garment like that, my lad. I could share it with them, Mort said hopefully. You've got to look smart, said Lessig severely. You've got to make an impression, stand out in the crowd. There is no doubt about it, he would. They sat out among the throng crowding the square, each listening to his own thoughts. Usually Mort visiting the town with his cosmopolitan atmosphere and strange dialects from villages as far as 5, even 10 miles. But this time he felt unpleasantly apprehensive, as if he could remember something that hadn't happened yet. The fair seemed to work like this. Men men looking for work stood in ragged lines in the center of the square. Many of them sported little symbols in their hats to tell the world the kind of work they were trained in. Shepherds wore wisp wool, carters a hank of horsehair, interior decorators a strip of rather interesting hessian wall covering, and so on. The boys seeking apprenticeship were clustered in the hub side of the square. You just go stand there. Well, and someone comes up and offers you an apprenticeship, Lessig, his voice trimmed with uncertainty. If they like the look of you, that is. How do they do that? Well, said Lessig and paused. Hamish hadn't explained about this bit. He drew on his limited knowledge of the marketplace, which was restricted to livestock sales, and ventured, I suppose they count your teeth in that. And make sure you don't wheeze and your feet are all right. I shouldn't I shouldn't let on about the reading. It unsettles people. And then what? Said Mort. Then you go and you learn a trade, said Lesig. What trade in particular? Well, carpentry's a good one, Lesig hazarded. Or thievery. Someone's got to do it. Mort looked at his feet. He was a dutiful son. When he remembered if being an apprentice was what was expected of him, he was determined to be a good one. Carpentry didn't sound very promising, though. Wood had a stubborn life of its own and a tendency to split. And official thieves were rare in the ramtops, where people weren't rich enough to afford them. All right, he said eventually, I'll go and give it a try, but what happens if I don't get apprenticed? Lezik scratched his head. I don't know, he said. I expect you just wait until the end of the fair, at midnight, I suppose. And now midnight approached. A light frost began to crisp the cobblestones. In the ornamental clock tower that overlooked the square, a couple of delicately carved little automatons whirled out of the trap doors in the clock face and struck the quarter hour. 15 minutes to midnight. Mort shivered. The crimson fires of shame and stubbornness flared up inside him. Hotter than the slopes of hell. He blew on his fingers for something to do and stared up at the freezing sky, trying to avoid the stares of the few stragglers among what remained of the fair. Most of the stall keepers had packed up and gone. Even the hot meal pie man had stopped frying his wares, and with no regard for personal safety was eating one. Jesus. The last of Mort's fellow hopefuls had vanished hours ago. He's a wall-eyed young man with a stoop and a running nose. The Sheepridge's one licensed beggar had pronounced him to be ideal material. The lad on the other side of Mort had gone off to be a toy maker. One by one, they had trooped off: the masons, the farers, the assassins, the mercers, the coopers, hoodwinkers, and plowmen. In a few minutes, it would be the new year, and 100 boys would be starting out, hopefully, on their careers. New, worthwhile lives of useful service rolling out in front of them. Mort wondered miserably why he hadn't been picked. He tried to look respectable and looked all prospective masters squarely in the eye to impress with them with his excellent nature and extremely likable qualities. This didn't seem to have the right effect. Would you like a hot pie? Said his father. No. He's selling them cheap. No, thank you. Oh, Lesik hesitated. I would ask the man if he wants an apprentice, he said helpfully. Very reliable, the catering trade. I don't think he does, said Mort. No, probably not, said Lesik. Bit of a one-man business, I expect. He's gone now anyway. Tell you what, I'll save you a bit of mine. I don't actually feel very hungry, Dad. There's hardly any gristle. No, but thanks all the same. Oh, Lesik deflated a little bit. He danced about a bit to stamp some life back into his feet, whistled the tuneless bars between his teeth. He felt he ought to say something, to offer some kind of advice, to point out that life has its ups and downs, to put his arm around his son's shoulder and talk expansively about the problems of growing up, to indicate, in short, the world is a funny old place where one should never, metaphorically speaking, be so proud as to turn down the offer of a perfectly good hot meat pie. They were alone now. The frost, the last one of the year, tightened its grips on the stones. High in the tower above them, cogged wheel went clonk. Tripped a lever, released a ratchet, and let a heavy lead weight drop down. There's a dreadful metallic wheezing noise, and the trap doors in the clock face slid open, releasing the clockwork men, swinging their hammers jerkily as if they were afflicted by robotic arthritis. They began to ring in the new day. Well, that's it, said Lezik hopefully. They have to find somewhere to sleep. Hog's watch night was no time to be walking in the mountains. Perhaps there was a stable somewhere. It's not midnight until the last stroke, said Mort distantly. Lezik shrugged. His sheer strength and Mort's obstinacy was defeating him. All right, he said, we'll wait then. And then they heard the clip-clop of hooves, which boomed rather more loudly around the chilly square than the comic acoustics should really allow. In fact, the clip-clop was astonishingly inaccurate word for the kind of noise that rattled around Mort's head. Clip-clop suggested a rather jolly little pony, quite possibly wearing a straw hat with holes cut out for its ears. An edge to this sound made it very clear that straw hats weren't an option. The horse entered the square by the hub road, steam curling off its huge, damp white flanks and sparks striking up from the cobbles beneath it. It trotted proudly, like a war charger. It was definitely not wearing a straw hat. The tall figure on its back was wrapped up against the cold. When the horse reached the center of the square, the rider dismounted slowly and fumbled with something behind the saddle. Eventually, he or she produced a nose bag, fastened it over the horse's ears, and gave it a friendly pat on the neck. The air took to a thick, greasy feel, and the deep shadows around Mort became edged with blue and purple rainbows. The rider strode towards him, black cloak billowing and making little clicking sounds on the cobbles. They were the only noise. Silence clamped down on the square like great drifts of cotton wool. The impressive effect was rather spoilt by a patch of ice. Oh, bugger. It wasn't exactly a voice. The words were all right, but they arrived in Mort's head without bothering to pass through his ears. He rushed forward to help the fallen figure and found himself grabbing hold of a hand that was nothing more than polished bone, smooth and rather yellowed like an old billiard ball. The figure's hood fell back, and a naked skull turned its empty sockets towards him. Not quite empty, though. Deep within them, as soon as they were windows looking across gulfs of space, were two tiny blue stars. It occurred to Mort that he ought to feel horrified, so he was slightly shocked to find that he wasn't. It was a skeleton sitting in front of him. It was a skeleton sitting in front of him, rubbing its knees and grumbling. But it was a live one, curiously impressive, but not for some strange reason, very frightening. Thank you, boy, said the skull. What is your name? Said Mort. Mortimer, sir. They call me Mort. What a coincidence, said the skull. Help me up, please. The figure rose unsteadily, brushing himself down. Now, Mort could see that there was a heavy belt around his waist, which was slung a white-handled sword. I hope you're not hurt, sir, he said politely. The skull grinned, of course, Mort thought. It wasn't much of a choice. No harm done, I am sure. The skull looked around and seemed to see Lezik, who appeared to be frozen on the spot for the first time. Mort thought an explanation was called for. My father, he said, trying to move protectively in front of Exhibit A without causing an offense. Excuse me, sir, but are you deaf? Correct. Full marks for observation, that boy. Mort swallowed. My father is a good man, he said. He thought for a while, and he added, quite good. I'd rather you left him alone It's all the same to you. I don't know what you have done to him, but I'd like you to stop it. No offense meant. Death stepped back, his skull on one side. Oh, I have merely put us outside time for a moment, he said. Uh, he will see and hear nothing that disturbs him. No, boy, it was you I came for. Me? You are here seeking employment. Light dawned on Mort. Are you looking for an apprentice? He said. The eye sockets turned toward him. Their actinic pinpoints flaring. I don't know what actinic means. Copy selection. Paste. Actinic. Of relating to, resulting from, or exhibiting chemical changes produced by radiant energy, especially in the visible in ultraviolet parts of the spectrum. Oh, okay. Of course. Oh, because his eyes are stars. Got it. Death waved a bony hand. There was a wash of purple light, a sort of visible pop, and Lezik unfroze. Above his head, the clockwork automatons got on with the job of proclaiming midnight, as time was allowed to come creeping back. Lezik blinked. Didn't see you there for a minute, he said. Sorry, mine must have been somewhere else. I was offering you your boy a position, said Death. I trust that meets your approval. What was your job again? Said Leslie, talking to a black-robed skeleton without showing even a flicker of surprise. I usher souls into the next world, said Death. Ah, said Leslie. Of course. Sorry, I should have guessed from the clothes. Very necessary work, very steady. Established business? I've been going for some time, yes, said Death. Good. Never really thought of it as a job for Mort. But it's good work. Always very reliable. What's your name? Death. Dad, said Mort urgently. Can't say I recognize the firm, said Leslie. Where are you based exactly? From the uttermost depths of the sea to the heights where even the eagle may not go, said Death. That's fair enough, nodded Leslie. Well, Dad, said Mort, pulling his father's cord. Death laid a hand on Mort's shoulder. What do you want, Puma? Puma, why are you scratching me? Why are you scratching me right now, huh? Why are you scratching me, huh? Puma, huh? You want some attention? Is that what it is? You want some food, huh? You're hungry. Are you hungry, bears? You hungry, bears? You want some food? Okay, I'll feed you. Okay. Eat. Mm-hmm. There you go. I'm gonna get some water too. Now, where was I? What your father sees and hears is not what you see and hear, he said. Do not worry him. Do you think you would want to see me in the flesh, as it were? But you're Death, said Mort. You go around killing people. I kill? Said Death, obviously offended. Certainly not. People get killed. But that's their business. I just take over from then on. After all, it'd be a bloody stupid world if people got killed without dying, wouldn't it? Well, yes, said Mort doubtfully. Mort had never heard the word intrigued. It was not in regular use in the family vocabulary, but a spark in his soul told him that here was something weird and fascinating and not entirely horrible, and that if he let this moment go, he'd spend the rest of his life regretting it. And he remembered the humiliations of the day in the long walk back home. He began, I don't have to die to get the job, do I? Being dead is not compulsory, and the bones? Not if you don't want to. Mort breathed out again. It had been starting to prey on his mind. If father says it's all right, he said. They looked at Leslie, who was scratching his beard. How do you feel about this, Mort? He said, with the brittle brightness of a fever victim. It's not everyone's idea of an occupation. It's not what I had in mind, I admit. But they do say that undertaking is an honored profession. It's your choice. Undertaken? Said Mort. Death nodded and raised his finger to his lips in a conspiratorial gesture. It's interesting, said Mort slowly. I think I'd like to try it. Where did you say your business was? Said Leslie. Is it far? No further than the thickness of a shadow, said Death. Where the first primal cell was, there was I also. Where man is, there I am. When the last life crawls under freezing stars, there will I be. Ah, said Leslie. You get about a bit then. He looked puzzled, like a man struggling to remember something important, then obviously gave up. Death patted him on the shoulder in a friendly fashion and turned to Mort. Have you any possessions, boy? Yes, said Mort, then remembered. Only I think I left them in the shop. Dad, we left the sack in the clothes shop. It'll be shut, said Leslie. Shops don't open on Hog's Watch Day. You have to go back the day after tomorrow. Well, tomorrow now. It is of little account. We will leave now. No doubt I will have business here soon enough. I hope you'll be able to drop in and see us soon, said Leslie. He seemed to be struggling with his thoughts. I'm not sure that will be a good idea, said Mort. Well, goodbye, lad, said Leslie. You're to do what you're told. You understand? And, excuse me, sir, do you have a son? Death looked rather taken aback. No, he said, I have no sons. I'll just have a last word with my boy if you have no objections. Then I will go see to the horse, said Death, with more than normal tact. Leslie put his arm around his son's shoulders, with some difficulty in the view of their difference in height, and gently propelled him across the square. Mort, you know your Uncle Hamish told me about this prenticing business, he whispered. Yes? Well, he told me something else, the old man confided. He said that it's not unknown for an apprentice to inherit his master's business. What do you think of that, then? I'm not sure, said Mort. It's worth thinking about, said Leslie. I am thinking about it, Father. Many a young man has started out that way. He makes himself useful, earns his master's confidence, and, well, if there's any daughters in the house, did Mr. say anything about daughters? Mr. who? Your new master. Oh, him. No, I don't think so, said Mort slowly. I don't think he's the marrying type. Many a king young man owes his advancement to his nuptials, said Leslie. He does? Mort, I don't think you're really listening. What? Leslie came to a halt in the frosty cobbles and spun the boy around to face him. You're really going to have to do better than this, he said. Don't you understand, boy? If you're going to amount to anything in this world, then you've got to listen. I'm your father telling you these things. Mort looked down at his father's face. He wanted to say a lot of things. He wanted to say how much he loved him, how worried he was. He wanted to ask his father what his father really thought he'd just seen and heard. He wanted to say that he felt as though he stepped on a molehill, and found out that it was really a volcano. He wanted to ask what nuptials meant. What he actually said was, "Yes, thank you. I'd better be going. I'll try to write you a letter. There's bound to be someone passing who can read it for us," said Lezick. "Goodbye, Mort." He blew his nose. "Goodbye, Dad. I'll come back to visit." Death coughed tactfully, although it sounded like a pistol crack of an ancient beam full of death watch beetle. We had better we better be going, he said. "Hop up, Mort." As Mort scrambled behind the ornate silver saddle, Death leaned down and shook Lezick's hand. "Thank you." He gathered up the reins and turned the horse towards Rim Road. From his perch behind the black robe, Mort waved desperately. Lezick waved back. Then, as the horse riders disappeared from the view, he lowered his hand and looked at it. The handshake. It felt very strange, but somehow he couldn't remember exactly why. Mort listened. Wait, hold on. Okay, so I gotta read like 60 more pages, and then I'm caught up with my friends. And that took a half hour, so an hour essentially. Damn, I'm hungry. Mm, yeah, let's see. What time were they meeting last week? It's the 18th. Okay. So like 11. So I have plenty of time. Or 10. So I have exactly like an hour. Okay. Fuck. All right. I think I'll make myself a little bit of brekkie. I'll make some brekkie and I'll just read. Wrestling is so cool. Uh, Hello? You know what? Looking at this, they should add a jackalope. Yeah, I have to eat something soon, or I'm gonna die, I think. I don't know. Mm, mm, mm. A sad story in Warhammer? Huh? I like this a lot, actually. Ew. I'm gonna throw in some adept is ridiculous, I think. Okay, I'm gonna get some food in me, and then I will be back. Because I can barely think, actually.
God damn it. I was like,
It's April 1st.
back in the day, Detective Ridiculous started off as an April Fool's Day joke. It seemed only appropriate that we bring it back again and hit you with an April Fool's Day episode of Detective Ridiculous, where we will be covering, as we said, one of the single greatest art heists in history, still unsolved to this day. It is the heist at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum.
Oh, I thought we were going to do something light like the Boston bombing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so light. Not fun fact, because it's the Boston Marathon bombing. The I cannot listen to Daft Punk's Get Lucky song because the first time I heard it, immediately the news of the Boston Marathon bombing came on the news, and I forever associate the two. And so every time I hear that song, the first thing I think about is the headline.
That's unfortunate, yet very funny.
Yeah, it's a great song, too. It sucks. But anyway, we're going to go over the art that was stolen, the strange cast of suspects that range from hippies to the most infamous mobsters in history, and we'll see if we can't piece this thing together.
All right.
So,
wait, so where was this again?
this is in Boston. This is sort of by...
I got that part.
This is sort of the Fenway area of Boston, Massachusetts. So sort of by Fenway Park-ish.
I don't think you're supposed to accentuate your AHs that much. Normally, you drop the I's.
Seems like I've never been to Boston. I'm just
I've been to Boston like 11 times. Normally you drop. Maybe they say it like that, but normally you drop the I's. That's why it's always like
okay.
And like Pataka,
Okay, that's right. Didn't you say you love going to Boston for PAX?
Yeah, well, the PAX was normally last weekend. I didn't go this time because I have a convention I have to go to upcoming, and I wanted to plan for it. But yeah, no, I've been like 11 times. It's a very cool city. Yeah.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Anywho, our story starts in 1990 on St. Patrick's Day in the Fenway area of Boston, Massachusetts. Famously, at this time of the year, Fenway area, St. Patty's Day, oh, it's just so peaceful, so quiet, not busy at all.
Yeah, like Mardi Gras in New Orleans, yeah?
Exactly. Late in the day, Rick Abbott, at the time 23 years old, is getting ready for his shift as a night watchman at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which sits about 15 minutes away from Fenway Park. Normally, he works just before midnight and his shift ends just before the sun comes up. In his own words, Rick said that sometimes I like to smoke a bit of weed. I like to do a little LSD before work because there's not much to do on the graveyard shift of security detail at a museum.
Very base. Anyways, back to this. All right. Mort listened to the clatter of stone under the horse's hooves. There was a soft thud of packed earth as they reached the road. And then there was nothing at all. He looked down and he saw the landscape spread out below him. The night etched in with moonlight silver. Ooh, it's fucking cold in here. Hold on. When did I bleed all over this sock? Weird. He looked down and saw the landscape spread out below him, the night edged with moonlight silver. If he fell off, the only thing he'd hit was air. He redoubled his grip on the saddle. Then Death said, "Are you hungry, boy?" "Yes, sir." The words came straight from his stomach without the intervention of his brain. Death nodded and reined in the horse. It stood on the air with great circular panorama of the disc glittering below it. Here and there, city was an orange glow. The warm seas near the rim nearer the rim, the was in the warm seas near the rim, the was a hint of phosphorescence. In some of the deep valleys was trapped daylight of the disk, which is slow and slightly heavy, was evaporating uh, silver silver steam. But it was outshone by the glow that rose towards the star and the rim itself. Vast streamers of light, shimmered and glittered across the night. Great golden walls surrounded the world. It's beautiful, said Mort softly. What is it? The sun is under the disk, said Death. Is it like this every night? Every night, said Death. Nature's like that. Doesn't anyone know? Me, you, the gods. Good, isn't it? Gosh. Death leaned over the saddle and looked down at the kingdoms of the world. I don't know about you, he said, but I could murder a curry. Hell yeah. But he said he doesn't murder. He doesn't kill. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Although it was well after midnight. The twin city of on Moorport was roaring with life. Mort had thought Sheepridge looked busy, but compared to the turmoil of the street around him, the town was, well, a morgue. Poets have tried to describe Ankh-Morpork. They have failed. Perhaps it's the sheer zestful vitality of the place. Or maybe it's just that the city with 1 million inhabitants and no sewers is rather robust for poets who prefer daffodils and no wonder. So let's just say that Ankh-Morpork is full of life as an old cheese on a hot day, as loud as a curse in a cathedral, as bright as an oil's slick, as colorful as a bruise, and as full of activity, industry, bustle, and sheer exuberant busyness as a dead dog on a termite mound. There were temples. There there were temples, their doors wide open, filling the streets with the sounds of gongs, cymbals, and in the case of some of the more conservative fundamentalist religions, the brief screams of the victims. There were shops whose strange wares spilled out onto the pavement. There seemed to be rather a lot of friendly young ladies who couldn't afford many clothes. There were flares and jugglers and assorted sellers of instant transcendence. The death stalked through all of it, and Mort had half expected him to pass through the crowds like smoke, but it wasn't like that at all. The simple truth was that wherever death walked, people just drifted out of the way. It didn't work like that for Mort. The crowds were gently parted for his new master and closed again just in time to get in his way. His toes got trodden on, his ribs were bruised. People kept trying to sell him unpleasant spices in suggestively shaped vegetables. And rather elderly ladies said, against all the evidence, that he looked all well set up. He looked a well set up young lad who would like a nice time. He thanked her very much and said he had hoped she was having a nice time already. Death reached the street corner, the light from the flare raising brilliant highlights to be polished on the polished dome of his skull, and sniffed the air. A drunk staggered up without quite realizing why, made a slight tour in this erratic passage with no visible reason. This is the city, boy, and said Death. What do you think? It's very big, said Mort uncertainly. I mean, why does everyone want to live all squeezed together like this? Death shrugged. I like it. It's full of life. Sir? Yes? What's a curry? The blue fires flared deep in the eyes of Death. Have you ever bitten a red-hot ice cube? No, sir, said Mort. Curries like that. Sir? Yes? Mort swallowed hard. Excuse me, sir, but my dad said if I don't understand, I was to ask questions, sir? Very commendable, said Death. He set off down the side street, the crowds parting in front of him like random molecules. Well, sir, I can't help but noticing the plain fact of it is, sir, is out with it, boy. How can you eat things, sir? Death pulled up short so that Mort walked into him. When the boy started to speak, he waved him into silence. He appeared to be listening to something. There are times, you know, he said half to himself, when I get really upset. He turned on the heel and set off down an alleyway at high speed, his cloak flying out behind him. The alley wound between dark walls and sleeping buildings, not so much a thoroughfare as a meandering gap. Death stopped by a decrepit water button, plunged his arm in at full length, bringing out a small sack with a brick tied to it. He drew his sword, a line flickering blue fire in the darkness, and sliced through the string. I get very angry indeed, he said. He upended the sack, and Mort watched the pathetic scraps of sodden fur slide out and lie in their spreading puddle on the cobbles. Death reached out with his white fingers and stroked them gently. After a while, something with like gray smoke curled up from the kittens and formed three small cat-shaped clouds in the air. They billowed occasionally, unsure of their shape, blinked at Mort with puzzled gray eyes. When he tried to touch one, his hand went straight through it and tingled. You don't see people at their best in this job, said Death. He blew on a kitten, sending it gently tumbling. A meow of complaint sounded as though it had come through a long way via a tiny tube. They're souls, aren't they? Said Mort. What do people look like? People-shaped, said Death. It's basically all down to the characteristic morphogenetic field. He sighed like the swish of a shroud, picked the kittens out of the air, and carefully stowed them away somewhere in the dark recesses of his robe. He stood up. Curry time, he said. It was crowded at the Curry Gardens in the corner of God Street and Blood Alley, but only with the cream of society, at least with those people who are found floating on the top, and who therefore it's wisest to call them the cream. Fragrant brushes planted among the tables nearly concealed the basic smell of the city itself, which was likened to the naval equivalent of a foghorn. Mort ate ravenously, but curbed his curiosity and didn't watch to see how Death could possibly eat anything. The food was there to start, and start with. It wasn't there later, so presumably Something must have happened in between. Moore got the feeling that Death wasn't really used to all this, but was doing it to put him at ease, like an elderly bachelor uncle who has been landed with his nephew on a holiday and is terrified of getting it wrong. The other diners didn't take much notice, even when Death leaned back and lit a rather fine pipe. Someone with a Someone with smoke curling out of their eye sockets takes some ignoring, but everyone managed it. Is it magic? Said Mort. What do you think? Said Death. Am I really here, boy? Yes, said Mort slowly. I've watched people. They look at you, but they don't see you, I think. You do something to their minds. Death shook his head. They do it all themselves, he said. There's no magic. People can't see me. They simply won't allow themselves to do it. Until it's time, of course. Wizards can see me, and cats. But your average human? No, never. He blew a smoke ring in the sky and added, strange but true. Mort watched the smoke ring wobble in the sky and drift away towards the river. I can see you, he said. That's different. All right, let me grab the rest of my food. Hi, baby. I love you. Oh. Yep. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some kind of love. Pop in my antidepressants. Oh. Mm. Damn. Yum. That's what you sound like. That's what you sound like. You're so fucking cute, Puma. I love you.